Zirvemizin keynote konuşmacısı Dr. Alfonso Vegara, Geleceğin Şehirleri için Mimariyi Tasarlamak başlıklı sunumunda akıllı bölgeler ve süper şehirlerden bahsedecek bize. Konuşmasını yapmak üzere Fundacion Metropoli İspanya Kurucusu ve Başkanı Sayın Dr. Alfonso Vegara'yı huzurlarınıza davet etmek istiyorum.
Good morning. Thank you for this invitation. It's really a pleasure. And inspire me enthusiasm seeing the private sector of your country working in the issue of the sustainability. Not only working in your own companies, but working together to face the challenge of sustainability. I would like to share with you the experience of our foundation. Our foundation is an international center of innovation in cities and regions. And we created this foundation in America 25 years ago to design the cities of the future. Most of the challenges that has our planet can be solved at the scale of the cities. And in the case of the Fundacion Metropoli, this is the EcoBox. This is a building that only consumes 25% of the energy consumed by another traditional buildings. So working at the scale of architecture, you can reduce the carbon emission a lot, and also working in the area of transportation. All our experience of 25 years working with cities around the world, we put in this book called Super Cities, Territorial Intelligence. Super cities is not about mega cities. Super cities come from super intelligence. Super intelligence is the combination between human intelligence and artificial intelligence. With artificial intelligence, we can improve our cities. We can reduce probably the consumption of energy, improve security, the consumption of water. We can improve a lot the efficiency of our city. But more important than artificial intelligence and digital technology is human intelligence, which is leadership, having a project of the future, sharing a vision that can connect private and public sector with a clear objective. This human intelligence together with artificial intelligence is super intelligence. If we apply it to the territory, it's super cities. Super cities come from super intelligence. Never in the history of the humanity, cities are growing at the rhythm that they are growing today. That's the reason why your sector, the construction sector, the urban solutions sector is key. Is key for the future, is key for the sustainability. And probably will be the sector, the economic sector, that will grow faster in the next couple of decades. So you see the cities over 1 million around the world. And I wanted to share with you one important point, is the role of medium-sized cities. Traditionally, several decades ago, mega cities, the biggest cities, were growing very fast. But today, there is a new protagonism of the medium-sized cities. In less than 20 years, they will go from representing 11% of the GDP, gross domestic product of the world, to represent 37% of the GDP. But what is the problem with medium-sized cities to be relevant in the global economy? They lack critical mass. They don't have, medium-sized cities, the connectivity necessary for the development of certain economic activities. Medium-sized cities do not have probably a diversification of the educational offer or financial services. So in order to be successful, medium-sized cities in the global economy need to work together, need to create an urban system, need to create something we call territorial diamond, working together. So the first example of this exercise we did in the United States, and you see these territorial diamonds in the United States. On the right, in red color, this is the northeast of the United States. And you see in the center, New York. This is the demography. This is the human intensity. You see New York. On the right, you see Boston. Boston has 75 universities. But without the talent living in Manhattan, living in New York, would be impossible to maintain the excellence of these universities. Or even in Philadelphia, near New York, on the left, you have 80 universities. Or on the left, you have Washington, the political capital. So these entities are the new engines of the global economy. No medium-sized cities in isolation, but these are the new engine, the territorial diamonds. We apply to Europe also this philosophy of the diamonds. And you can see we call this territory, the European diagonal. Lisbon, Madrid, Barcelona, Marseille, Milano. This is the territorial diamond. This vision, this complementarity is important. Traditionally, we work with the competitive advantages of cities. In the future, we will work with complementary advantages. Madrid, for instance, in the center of the image, Madrid is one of the main logistic hubs in the south of Europe. Why? Because Barcelona and Valencia, close by, they have important ports. So this connectivity, and now with high-speed train, we are connecting this diamond and inspiring the infrastructure of the future. So it is important to have a global vision. Going to another part of the world, this is Singapore. Singapore is a very small island. It's an island of 750 square kilometers, very small. 40 kilometers from left to right, and north-south, 25 kilometers. We have a population of 6.5 million people. This is Singapore. But Singapore is one of the most innovative cities in Asia. In Singapore, today, they decided to become a living lab, a laboratory of experimentation of urban solutions. Every project, a new airport, the port of Singapore, the housing programs, the congestion charge mechanism for regulation traffic, the new technology parks. Every project should be developed at a very high level of excellence to be a reference. Imagine in Singapore, they have a lot of difficulties in doing that because they don't have the complexity of countries like Turkey. But imagine around Istanbul, we could create probably the most sophisticated and complex living lab in the world. Singapore in 1900 was like that, 1950, 1990, and you will see in 2 decades now, you will see. So Singapore is growing beyond Singapore. It's growing in the north, which is Malaysia. It's growing in the islands of the south, which is Indonesia. We call the super city. Singapore super city, one city in 3 countries. So this idea of complementarity is not about center and periphery. It's about polycentrism. Imagine on the right the island of Bintan Island. So Bintan Island will be the future of Singapore. Bintan Island, as a project that we developed together with the government of Indonesia, can be an eco-island based on the complementarity and the circular economy that will be generated through the collaboration with Singapore. We analyze the coastal line, we analyze the second nature, I mean the forest, the beaches, and before designing the infrastructure, before designing the buildings, we understand nature. And that this nature inspire the future of the design. For instance, the water system. Energy and water will be keys in the next century. So this is the water we can capture in the center of this island with this technology we call Marina Barrage that has been developed in Singapore to use the seawater to provide water solution for the whole island. Then, when you understand nature, you can create the infrastructure and make a final design of the eco-island. This is the island of Bintan, a little bigger than Singapore, and today has 300,000 inhabitants, and we are preparing for 3 million, but in cooperation between 2 different countries. This is the center, this is the bay of Bintan in this context, and digital technology is very important, particularly for islands that are isolated from the rest. And the diversification of the economy, Without the presence of Singapore, would be impossible for Indonesia to develop Bintan as a hub of innovation. So this is the context of the super city of Singapore. This territory belongs to Indonesia, and the government of Indonesia wants to use these islands, Batam, Bintan, Karimun as the Silicon Valley of Indonesia. So this complementarity, you will understand later around Istanbul, that could happen also in other contexts. One of the most fascinating territories I know is the one you are seeing now in these slides. I had the privilege and the opportunity to work with Zeynep from Kale Group to do a research on the future of this territory before the pandemic. And we saw Istanbul not only at the traditional scale of the city, but in the context of the Marmara Sea. This territory is amazing. Probably you are used to live in this amazing city, and you consider usual, but this is really unique from outside perspective. But you see not only Istanbul, but you see Bursa is close by, Çanakkale, Bandırma. You have medium-sized cities around this territory. And by improving the connectivity between these territories, we can connect, we can integrate the economic system of these areas. This is the diamond. We see the Marmara diamond, probably one of the most sophisticated in the world. This is the real laboratory of innovation in urban solution for the future. In this area, you have almost 40% of the economy of Turkey, but in our research, we saw that probably by 2050, only in 30 years' time, 20 million people will come to live and work in this area. If we don't plan this territory, it will be a disaster. But we have the opportunity to create one of the most sophisticated, polycentric, and integrated territories in the world. This is an isochrone from Istanbul. So you see in 30 minutes, we have, from the center of Istanbul, we reach 14 million people. In 1 hour, a little more. In 2 hours, 16 million people. But if we introduce high-speed train technology, in 2 hours, we can reach almost the whole diamond. This is Bursa. Bursa, in 30 minutes, you have approximately 2 million people. In 1 hour, 2 million people. But in 2 hours, we reach Istanbul, and we have a population of 15 million people. No? Or even Bandırma. So in Bandırma, it's relatively small. In 30 minutes, we have a little more than 100,000 inhabitants. In 1 hour is 400,000 inhabitants, but in 2 hours is 2 million people approximately. But with high-speed train connection, we can have 16 million people around Bandırma. That gives a centrality in the context of this area. Imagine the potential of Bandırma in the future being the super port of this territory. And we can use not only the traditional infrastructure, but also the sea connection between all different territories. And in our opinion, one of the most potentialities we see in Çanakkale. Çanakkale, today, you have a population of less than 120,000 inhabitants in 1 hour, but immediately with high-speed train connection, you can really reach a connection between one point and the other point of the two straits of the Marmara State. So the location of Çanakkale, historically, and in the future, when new infrastructure will come, will be important. So you see Çanakkale, you see that almost 14 million people can be reached in 2 hours when high-speed train technology can be developed. And the location is really key in a very interesting context where we can analyze medium-sized cities connected and creating this territory, this polycentric territory. So the growth, the future growth, these 20 million people that we expect in the next 30 years to come to the region, no need to go to Istanbul, no need to increase the congestion, but having a polycentric structure, which is the new ways of facing the future of the cities. So you see in this area, with high-speed train and articulating and activating all the medium-sized cities, you can have, in a territory which is only 5% of the surface of Turkey, almost 40% of the GDP. This is today. In the future, more than half of the economy of Turkey will be there. Imagine together your sector, the construction sector, considering a laboratory for new infrastructure, water solution, a construction solution to create probably the lab, the laboratory of experimentation that you can share with the world and you can help export your talent, your companies, your technology around the world. And even this Marmara ring, this golden ring, will be a link of traditional road connectivity, high-speed train connectivity, ports connectivity, and water solution, water connection inside this territory that will connect Çanakkale, Istanbul, the two straits, in a very, very special location in the world. To finalize my presentation, I would like to share with you a similar example we are doing with the cluster of urban solution of Spain for our cities, our capital, Madrid. What are the ideas, how we see the future of Madrid? So this is the location of Madrid. And the first idea we accepted was the idea that Madrid could become a connector. Imagine, you are a connector from different parts of the world. But in the case of Madrid, not at the scale of Istanbul, we would like to be the connector between Europe and Latin America. And also the connector between Europe and Africa. Africa is the emerging continent. So this design, this drawing, represents this idea of being the biggest connector in the south of Europe. This is the digital perception of the city of Madrid. The more intensity in yellow is the highest digital activity. But digital activity and physical activity in many occasions correspond. So you see our infrastructure. We have rings. The first one we call M30. The second one is M40. So this is the infrastructure, radial infrastructure, and the rings we already have. So in 15 minutes from the center of Madrid, we reach 3.5 million inhabitants. In 30 minutes, 6 million. In 1 hour, 7 million. But we have high-speed train. You see these lines connecting Segovia, Toledo, Guadalajara, this line, that allow in 1 hour to reach 8.6 million people. So this is the size. But we have a lot of municipalities, so never has been doing a plan together. So we need to understand the ecology and the functionality to plan for the future. Problem is not urbanization. The problem is the lack of planning. So by having a vision of the future, understanding the green system, understanding the mobility is key. So in the case of Madrid, we try to discover the component of excellence in terms of infrastructure. This is the airport. The airport is very close. This is a competitive advantage. Very, very close to the very center of Madrid. Distance is important. This is the airport of Madrid. These are the two high-speed train stations in the north, Chamartín, in the south, Atocha. And this high-speed train station connect with the rest of the country. This is the radial roads of high-speed train connecting in this area. These are the regional trains in red, and this is the metro. So together, we have a very important infrastructure. Inside the M30, which is the first ring, you say in blue color, inside is underground, all this infrastructure. So we agreed together, the urban solution cluster and also the institution, to create the place, the most sophisticated place for mobility, sustainable mobility solution inside the M30. Because we already have the option of having this underground infrastructure. Additionally, you see this analysis we call space syntax that allow us to understand the centrality of different points in metropolitan Madrid. These points, you see, are points of high centrality. The red lines is higher centrality, the blue lines lower centrality. So these points are potential areas of new centrality. It looks like, when you see this image, that we are in the periphery of Madrid, but we are really in the center of the metropolitan area of Madrid. And for these points, we call the gates of Madrid. And these points has a special advantage for commercial centers, for creating jobs, for intermodality, for last mile logistics solution, and eliminating pressure in the very center of the city. You have a lot of problem also in Istanbul with mobility. All big cities has huge problem of mobility. So how we are facing this challenge? So you see, emphasizing, strengthening the density of these points, of these gates of Madrid that are around this territory. And these points are very well connected with the existing public infrastructure system. So our objectives is to go from these radial roads we call M40, which is the second ring, to create in the interior, going from motorways to eco-boulevards. Eco-boulevards is a totally different, you will see later, is a totally different approach. We want to create the most advanced decarbonization and zero emission program in Europe by transforming our urban motorways into eco-boulevard. The M30 and the radial roads until these gates of Madrid. Even for bicycles. In Copenhagen, they create the bicycle superhighways. We invested a lot in highways for cars. Why not investing in highways for bicycles? Or even Auckland in New Zealand, also they invested in this bicycles superhighway. But the M30 today, the M30 is a road which is a barrier. It's very strong. And this is today the M30. It's impossible for pedestrian. It's impossible to use this space for bicycles. Impossible for buses because the speed of the car is different to the speeds of the buses. So we would like to transform this motorway into a boulevard. At the boulevard, we design with strengthening the transportation technology and also greening the eco-boulevard, decarbonizing the buildings, and also reducing the speed of this solution. So instead of having a motorway, we have a line of integration with transversal permeability, mixed use, and plenty of life. This is today. But without a lot of investment, we can go to putting pedestrian people, to put monorail, to put transportation system, and this is the concept of eco-boulevard with a reduced speed for traffic, and transforming the structure of the city in this direction. Inside the M30, this is, we are implementing an idea that probably you can use also in Istanbul. We analyze which lines are really fundamental for transporting people and for transportation of goods, for e-commerce. And these lines you see in the image are necessary for transportation. So we went from traditional blocks on the left to super block or living block, injecting life. So imagine that inside the M30, we identify 310 super blocks, or we call also cells of urban life, injecting life. How we can apply that? Imagine this is Madrid. The idea is to identify these lines of connectivity that are necessary for the mobility of the city, but in the interior, we can reduce the presence of the car, we can inject green, recover the patios, the roofs, and blocks by block, transforming the center of the city of Madrid. You see in gray the lines for transportation of goods and people, and in green, 80% of the streets that can become more human. Children can go to the street, elderly population, terraces, urban life in the center of Madrid, and creating this laboratory of sustainable mobility solution, including shared mobility in the city. And to finalize my presentation, only one point that Madrid cannot be center and periphery, as traditionally in many other cities around the world. We think that polycentrism, the hearts of the neighborhoods, are really very important. So through technical analysis, we identify points where we can create new centers, new points of human intensity. And we analyze both physically and digitally to discover several points. These areas you see in the image are traditional small villages that the growth of Madrid absorb these traditional villages, but these are points of identity. And we create this idea of 15-minute city, or corazones de barrio, we call hearts of the neighborhoods, the hearts of the neighborhoods, to have a much more polycentric structure and give dignity to the periphery also. For instance, this is an example, one of the peripheries of Madrid. Traditionally, we have these buildings of the 60s and 50s, where in the desarrollism of the economy of Spain, but with next generation funds of the European Union, we can inject technology to isolate buildings, to decarbonize building, and to reduce the public space. So this is the Madrid experience. It's totally different. Every city needs a specific solution, but the main message I wanted to share with you is that the urban solution sector will grow very fast in the future, and this sensitivity that you are showing in this event on sustainability, commitment of the private sector with the sustainability is very important. And we can work at the scale of the city, where we can integrate different solutions in real estate sector, construction material, water, energy, and this is really quite a challenge. And thank you very much to allow me to share with you this experience from Spain. Thank you.